World War II was the most brutal and bloodiest conflict of the 20th century. The troops of the warring countries fought fierce battles that left hundreds of thousands of dead bodies. Analysis of the confrontation shows that some armies were more effective than others, repeatedly managing to disrupt the enemy and inflicting huge losses. Do not move from your screen, because in the next few minutes we will compare the foot soldiers of the Allied and Axis countries, and we'll tell you which were the best. Are you ready? Let's begin. When evaluating which nation had the most efficient troops, there are several factors to take into account. Military units could perform better or worse depending on the power of their weapons, the tactics and strategy of their commanders, trust in their leaders, morale, and the training received. On the other hand, the terrain in which they fought, the weather and luck could also be influential. An unexpected rain that left the ground wet and turned into a quagmire could mean the death of even the most veteran. In the same way, a sandstorm in a desert campaign could give a retreating unit the perfect opportunity to escape without being pursued by its enemies. On the battlefield, men had to prepare for the unexpected. The noise was so loud that they might not be able to hear their officers' orders, or the radios were failing and they had to operate blind. Their rifles could stop working after crossing a river on foot, leaving them in a state of utter helplessness. The most effective military units were those that, taking all these caveats into account, could obtain good results even in the most adverse situations. Although there were many armies in action, we are going to compare two Allies and two Axis examples, to get an idea of the performance of each side. Let's start by looking at the Japanese infantry, which was one of the most feared of its time. The reason few wanted to fight the Japanese was simple: the Imperial Army was made up of fanatics. They were known to fight like demons, so combat only ended when the last man was dead. The Japanese preferred to carry out a suicide charge at bayonet point rather than raise the white flag in capitulation. The reason for this was that Japanese society valued discipline and blind obedience to the emperor, while the brief training in the army reinforced the ideals of bravery and pursuing honor even at the cost of one's death. Soldiers were created by beatings every time they broke a rule. On the battlefield, they pressed the opponent in light infantry units, supported by air and naval artillery. They traveled light, preferring to collect their provisions from the bodies of fallen enemies. The ferocity of the men, however, was overshadowed by the poor weapons they had. The Arisaka Type 99 rifles were decent, but the Allies' semi-automatics were much better. Japanese machine guns were unreliable at all, and it was normal for them to fail when they were most needed. On the other hand, their pistols were obsolete, so the most profitable tactic ended up being the bayonet charge. It is interesting to compare the Japanese with the troops of Great Britain. The British infantry earned a reputation for behaving cautiously, preferring slow but sure advances to hasty and risky moves. The great problem of this nation was that it had few soldiers available to fight, so it could not suffer heavy casualties. This is why they decided to take advantage of their existing resources and train each man to act as effectively as possible. To this end, practice firefights using live ammunition were arranged so that recruits could distinguish the sound of a real gun and could detect when bullets impacted near them. For the British Army, a cautious soldier was worth 10 brave men, that is, the complete opposite of what was promoted by Japan. At the time of combat, the infantrymen moved in perfect synchronization, following the plan of the commanders to the letter. Under no circumstances should the strategy be altered once the fire started, as this jeopardized the entire coordination effort. To facilitate the deployment of the troops, each infantry cell had 10 men, of whom 3 remained in reserve. Thus, they made sure that, in the event that one of the other 7 fighters died or became incapacitated, he would be replaced by someone with experience and not a novice. Let us now turn to the American case. American troops were famous for shooting anything that moved. Their passion for pulling the trigger was due to the fact that the U.S. industry could produce abundant ammunition, so wasting it was not a serious problem. When they had to capture a position, a group of infantrymen had to reduce the enemy with covering fire, while other units were in charge of approaching from the flanks until they were close enough to eliminate them. The weapons they had made this task easier, since they had the powerful M1 Garand semi-automatic rifle, one of the most effective in the war. Officers without troop command fought alongside common soldiers, which meant they were respected and men fully trusted those of higher rank. However, the U.S. Army did not have commanders trained to lead entire battalions or divisions. This is why, on many occasions, the larger infantry units were left in charge of British officers. Now let's look at the most effective soldiers of World War II. According to several specialists, it was nothing more and nothing less than the infantry of the Wehrmacht, the German army. The German troops were the most disciplined and professional, and thanks to their technological and strategic advances, they managed to pulverize their enemies. The Third Reich used its infantry in new ways, such as supporting tank divisions, when it was normal at that time for it to be the other way around. Units were organized around the MG-42 machine gun, which had gut-wrenching firepower. The rest of the platoon had to provide constant cover and ammunition, taking care not to be outflanked by the Allies. German infantry performed particularly well fighting in urban centers. Their gray uniforms provided valuable camouflage, and MP-40 submachine guns gave them tactical superiority inside cities. The Wehrmacht fought on two war fronts simultaneously, the Eastern and the Western, so they were vastly outnumbered by their enemies. However, good organization, cohesion and knowing how to take advantage of the opponent's weaknesses guaranteed them victory on many occasions. In fact, it is estimated that the German infantry troops caused twice as many casualties as all the other armies in the conflict. Whether they were attacking, retreating, or defending a position, they were deadly. In conclusion, it is possible to state that the Wehrmacht infantry was the most effective of all those analyzed. When wondering why Germany was defeated, it is worth remembering that a war cannot be won with infantry alone, no matter how remarkable. Many other factors caused the Third Reich to be crushed, among them the bad strategic decisions of Adolf Hitler and his commanders, such as the invasion of the Soviet Union. On the other hand, the lack of resources to maintain the war effort ended up taking its toll on Nazism and led them to the abyss. We reached the end of the video and we want to ask you, which country had the best infantry in World War II? Leave us your answer in the comment box below and don't forget to subscribe to our channel to learn about many more military events that left their mark on history.